I recently made a video about the water situation in San Miguel. And I initially decided to make it because people were writing me and saying, I really want to buy a house there, and is there going to be any water? And they were even talking to people and saying, I'm retiring to San Miguel, and the people were saying, well, you better make sure you have water because they're about to run out of water. And so I made a video that addressed that. And then I received several comments, both in person and through YouTube, implying that I was minimizing the situation. And also that I wasn't talking about it, which I thought was extremely strange since I was making a video about it. So I want to point out a couple of things. You have seen a previous video about Dan coming here and building a house. You'll see another one about the house as it's progressing. But at this moment, we can see these two large blue tanks. One of those tanks will hold water that comes from the well, and the other will collect gray water, which is essentially all the water that you use in your house that is not sewage. And there will be a really interesting high-tech device that will be buried next to the gray water one, which essentially separates them and removes the need for dual plumbing. And this is a tremendously great thing, and it not only shelters out the gray water, but it also speeds up the processing of the solid material that's left so that it can be removed. And it is actually in a very controlled circumstance because you can get illnesses from being exposed to mountains of human sewage. It will combine it with dirt and ultimately be a tremendous amendment to the soil. And here in San Miguel, our soil is a step or two or three above sand, depending on where you are. So everything that we can do about amending the soil makes our world better. Also, this house is designed with a system that will collect all the rainwater that falls on the roof. So when the house is finished, there will be multiple faucets in the front and the back. One faucet will tap the water that comes from the well, and the other will tap the water, the gray water, in the other big blue tank. And so a tremendous amount, if not all, of the watering that Dan will do during his lifetime will really be this recycled water. And in the years where we have tremendous rain, 4 years ago we had 30 inches in one weekend, his house will capture all of that, keep it in the tank, and he'll be able to dole it out as needed to his plants. Also, I'm in the early stages of working on a 500-acre project which will involve building homes within agave plantations. It will ultimately be a location that will produce its own brand of mezcal. And we will not only be doing these things, the gray water, black water recycling, as well as capturing the water from the rooftops of each house, but we also will be capturing the water from all of the streets and putting them in retention ponds during these heavy rain seasons, and then drawing from the retention ponds to water the agave. So I just want to be clear that an enormous percent of the population here is very concerned about water use. It's very common to see either low flow or more commonly two-stage flushing toilets. And this is just an area of which we have great concern. It is also the case that we are using within our reservoir a fantastic amount of water to grow low value added crops. And if you would see an alfalfa farm which can grow 6 to 8 crops a year, and you saw all the water that would be applied to it in the course of a year, it's something like a 10-story building. So a tremendous amount of water is being expended on very low value crops. And this is pretty common. I mean, people grow up and they learn these things and their farm runs pretty automatically. And there's an investment in learning about growing other things and, how that will work and so on. So the vineyards, for example, are producing probably 25 times the value added for every liter or gallon of water used in comparison to alfalfa. And table grapes, which will grow and thrive here, are so profitable that the CIA is trying to convince people in Afghanistan that they would be better off growing table grapes than growing opium poppies. So there's a fantastic amount of ways to use less water in more productive ways. And that was what I was trying to emphasize in my previous video. In an absolute amount, we have plenty of water for San Miguel to get much bigger. For people who are looking forward to the opening of the new Waldorf Astoria Hotel, I can promise you that they will have water and you'll be able to take a bath twice a day if you want. But we just have some decisions that we need to make as a community. Some of that is addressed by the fact that you can acquire water. It's actually not rights, it's concessions. But some of that is addressed by the fact that you can buy water concessions. Some of it is addressed by the fact that Sapazma, which is our local water utility, is expanding by acquiring those concessions and also by acquiring the wells of various developments around the community. So you build a community, you have a well, so on. You can transfer that to Sapazma. Sapazma takes over the well. They take over the responsibility for the pipes and the water in the neighborhood. And usually there's a significant net gain because the rights you have are more than you are using. So we're taking those steps. There are plenty of people who would stand here and tell you that we're not taking them fast enough. I think we will be doing better with that in the coming decade than we have in the last decade. But nobody who wants to visit here or live here needs to feel that they may not have water at some point in the future. And in regard to one of the comments that was made in YouTube, it's really true that water tables generally are falling throughout Mexico. They are also falling in the Ogala Aquifer, which runs through the center of the United States, starting in Texas and going almost to Canada. And some of this is because of the agricultural uses that have been made of the water. And some of this is because the aquifers are dynamic. They are a few feet higher at one time and a few feet lower at another. And that, of course, is a function of the rain, and probably the rain, not now, but the rain, 9 years ago when the water started percolating through the soil. So we're all concerned about this. We have very big aquifers. So I felt that over the 20 years plus that I've had my well, that it seems like we're losing something about 2 feet a year. And with the base of with the aquifer as we have identified it, we'll be in trouble in 140 years. So we want to conserve water. We want to do everything in the smartest way. And we would prefer really that the aquifer levels weren't falling. But many, many things will happen over the next 140 years. And in fact, one of my clients is one of the top cold fusion people in the world. And the likelihood is that we will have commercial coal fusion production, which will mean essentially free electricity. And so if we need to pipe water from the Atlantic or the Pacific to irrigate our fields and kind of change our world, we'll sure do that. And also, if you look at the projections of climate change, if these things take place over the latter part of the century, Australia, Mexico, and Africa will be the prime beneficiaries of the increased rain. So I think we're taking a pretty responsible position. I'd like to sit down with some of these people who grow alfalfa and discuss other possibilities with them. But I'm not at all worried about the water situation in San Miguel in my lifetime, and really in the balance of the century, which is almost certainly going to outstrip my lifetime. And so if you were thinking about coming here, please know that you can take a bath, you can water your yard, you can wash your car, you can do whatever you want without committing some grievous ecological sin.